All right, Jastin, A through Z.
Let's go with D.
D. That's just practically news again.
Cool.
All right, Jess, I've got a question for you. Why does Burger King suck so bad?
Look, they have a catchy song. Their mascot is royalty. He's a king called the King. You can have it your way there. They flame broil their Whopper. So when you add all those things up and nothing else, that makes Burger King great.
But then why do their sales suck?
Jastin is exhausted from this question.
I think that is because people just haven't discovered how great Burger King is. Or they just forgot. They don't remember. Heather forgot about how great it was, but you know, jogged her memory a little bit. And she remembered when she was a kid loving it. So I think that's proof that most people are like that. They just need to be reminded, and then bam, they can go there, have it their way. Boom. Question answered.
So you're saying that this company is so poorly run that the fact that it's been around for 69 years and people forget about it?
Well, being the king of the flame broiled Whopper is a very complicated thing. And Burger King their slogan is have it your way. They're not going to force anybody to eat there. They want people to be free, okay? And so they hope that people will use that free will to come back when it's time.
But since their sales keep declining and they have the second most stores outside of McDonald's in the fast food realm, wouldn't it be more imperative to them that people come now instead of just at a leisurely pace of once every few decades?
They'll be okay. I think they're doing just fine. And they're remodeling.
That's not how businesses work,
so many
Jastin.
stores.
Businesses don't work when people just come, eventually. They kind of need to continue making money.
I see. Well, one thing's for sure. That song is very catchy. I think as long as you can do things like that, next time get a Grammy winning composer on it. You just got to keep on singing to these people and they'll keep filling the doors. And then you can remodel like what they're doing in my hometown. They are doing a vicious remodeling. I mean, it's been going on it had to have been a year and a half. I want to say 20 episodes ago, I said that they were remodeling and they continue to work. I actually saw people working there the other night when I drove by. So I think you remodel, you keep singing to people, keep your doors open, you will be fine. Burger King will prosper. And as long as they got that flame broiler, trust me, they've got fans they'll never lose. Like me. And
Jastin.
Child Heather and
8 people going to a Burger King a year and going to keep it open.
Can we just stop hating on Burger King?
I mean,
please.
There was a Burger King in New Lenox, right by the movie theater I frequent. It's a vacant building now.
Oh,
There's a Burger King in Elk Grove Village, right on a busy street. Lots of businesses, lots of tech places there, a lot of data centers there. Lots of restaurants. Burger King closed, just right in the middle of all of it, just closed, just vacant as fuck. They even got rid of the BK, like the big sign on the pole.
mm-hmm.
It's just a pole now.
And you're sure you didn't see a sign for remodeling?
No, it's just there. It's just a building that nobody even wants to buy because they don't even want the building that a Burger King was in, Jastin, let alone any of the food that comes from it.
You know what? I appreciate your Ted Lasso-like belief in Burger King, though.
Is it a Ted Lasso-ian belief, or is it just malarkey? Is it just a fool's belief, Jastin?
Well, Sterling, I can have it my way. So I have to believe what I want to believe. And I believe in BK, man. I believe in it. Okay? I believe.
I already know.
They're going to turn this around. They're going to remodel. They're going to do, I'm sure if you talk to the people who own that land and everything in that place where Burger King closed down, I bet they've got a great story for why Burger King had to go elsewhere to expand its business.
When was the last time you ever saw a new Burger King? Not a remodeled one, just like a new one pop up. Like you're driving down the road and go, oh, a new Burger King.
Next question.
I'm just saying, Jastin, they're not expanding. In fact, current projections have one of their largest franchisees, somebody that owns 56 stores themselves, is closing all 56 of their stores that they have. So out of all 56 of those Burger Kings, not one of them is successful enough to keep open.
Wow. None of them are remodeling.
Oh, no, the guy's filing for bankruptcy and closing all the stores.
Oh, goodness. The only thing I could think that must have happened is he ate the burgers himself.
Because no one else was eating them. So he just didn't want the food to go to waste.
It's just relentless on it today.
Can we please stop this? I mean, we don't know what happened. We got to talk to the guy. But I imagine he was getting, high off his own supply, so to speak. He probably just couldn't get enough of the burgers himself. And that's why this is happening. But I believe in BK to turn situations like this around. We're going to come here in a few months, next year sometime, and you watch. Your tune's going to be different, sir. You're going to be singing the Burger King tune because it's going to be all new and jazzed up. And we're going to be talking about how Burger King has opened 57 new stores, more than they closed. You mark my words.
All right.
BK ain't going nowhere.
It is April 25th of the year 2023. When we record our episode, the week of April 25th, 2024, I will look up the number of stores Burger King has open. And we'll see if it's gone up.
Burger King, don't fail me. Please, BK. Please, come on. Come on, BK. We're rooting for you, BK. Me, child Heather, we're rooting for you, BK.
It was very heartfelt. I appreciate that, Jastin.
Mm-hmm.
As of right now, as of April 18th, 2023, there are 7,257 Burger Kings nationwide. So let's just keep that in mind. Okay?
Okay. So I need 57 of them open in a year's time. Let's do this, BK. Let's go.
You need there to be
Or remodels.
7,314 stores.
Okay.
All right. I've saved the data. I've put a reminder in my calendar.
Can a remodel count as just half a store?
No, it still counts as a whole store. As long as it's technically an open franchise, it's a store. We'll see.
Come on, BK.
There's no come on BK, Jastin. It will decline.
Heather, just tell him how good it was when you were a child.
The chicken fries were good with whatever sauce I had. And I can't remember the sauce, probably sweet and sour.
I'm sure the chicken fries were delicious. I'm sure they were. So delicious that decades later you still haven't had them again. They're so good that you can go decades between having them.
Yeah,
because that's exactly what every restaurant wants. To be so good, their customer base can wait 20 years till they have it again.
Now, Jastin, I did try to find a way to get Sterling to be on the side of BK because there was this show back in the day called The Crazy Ones with Robin Williams and Sarah Michelle Gellar. Kelly Clarkson was on an episode of that, and she was like trying to do a new like advertising jingle, and I thought it was for BK, and I was like, that might be the only thing that Sterling could, that might get him, but it was not BK. It was McDonald's. Oh. I tried though, Jastin. I tried.
Oh, we were so close.
That means even in a fictionalized world, Kelly Clarkson's still singing just about McDonald's. We all know in real life she'd sing about Whataburger.
Sure.
She's a BK. She's right there.
She's a proud Texan. She'd sing about Whataburger.
Honestly,
she looks like a BK girl to me. She looks like a BK girl to me. That's what I see.
No, Justin, because she has taste. She has skill. She has charisma. She's got a certain je ne sais quoi.
That does not ring BK to you?
No, that's a BK woman right there.
See, if she was really a BK woman, Justin, she would have been like, no, show, I have to sing about Burger King. Kind of like how Ben Affleck shut down production on the movie Gone Girl because he simply refused to wear a New York Yankees hat because he is a Boston Red Sox guy.
Did he really do that?
Yeah.
That's funny.
It got shut down for a couple of days because he would not wear the hat.
Wow.
They compromised New York Mets hat. He was like, I'll wear a Mets hat. Fuck the Yankees. Just saying.
That's funny.
That's actually pretty funny. No, but she's a BKW. You ask her right now, she'll go, yeah, I'm BKW all the way.
Yes, that's why she's singing a song about McDonald's.
I tried, Jastin. Sorry, man. Jastin's not going to speak for the rest of the episode in honor of the BK death happening.
In honor of his fallen store.
Oh, no.
It's okay. It's okay. But
you like it, and I appreciate that you like it a lot.
All the Burger King guys out there know what I'm talking about. It's good, right? The BKGs, it's good. And have you
listeners, let us know.
You were a BKC, so you're a Burger King child. So
the problem is she's an adult.
You were practically born there. So
she is an adult now.
And that's why you need to be a BKW. You just need to go back and renew that love that you once had as a BKC. Become a BKW.
All right, Jastin. The next time you come up here, we will go on a hunt to find a Burger King.
A hunt?
Yeah, because the next time you come up here, there's no telling how many stores they'll have left.
Oh, man.
Wow.
We might have to drive hours. We might have to go interstate at that point. It would not surprise me if Gary, Indiana had a Burger King. So we might have to drive to Gary.
So just 3 BKPs on a BKT. Gotcha.
To Gary fucking Indiana. Satan's asshole. Yeah. I see that look on your face, Jastin.
The intense.
I'm like,
staring.
Satan's, what do I say to that? I mean, I don't know. Satan probably likes Burger King too. He's probably a BKS. I don't know. I don't know what Satan likes.
BK Satan. A BKS.
I mean, I think he's a BKS. I don't know.
Jastin, he's the Dark Lord, not a crazy person.
But it's flame broiled. He likes fire. I mean, why would he not like it?
But Jastin,
he's got to be a BKS.
It's hell. Wouldn't all burgers be flame broiled in hell?
But that one's even more. He's like, yeah, this is how I love them. I don't know how he sounds, but
that was great.
But I can see him going, I love BK, Surely he's a BKS.
So what you're saying, Jastin?
Tell me he's a McDonald's ass. No way.
So what you're saying, Jastin, is Burger King's new slogan should be Burger King, the official burger of hell? Satan's favorite burger?
Man, that's I don't know if that advertising would hit with all of audiences, but definitely with some.
There'd be no quicker way to make me not be a Satanist than to have that. I wouldn't want to be like, I wouldn't want to be associated with Burger King.
Just abandon everything because of it.
Yeah. I've got standards. I can't wait for that movie, Bill and Joe Go to Burger King.
Yeah, where does White Castle fall on this list? I've been there like twice ever.
White Castle makes more money than Burger King does.
Surely not. Surely not.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to pull it up again, Jastin?
No. Well, I'm sure they cheat somehow. I don't know.
Listeners, you should let us know your choice fast food place. If it's Burger King, if it's McDonald's, if it's White Castle, whatever it is, let us know.
So Burger King makes roughly $1.4 million per store. White Castle makes 1.7.
Well, they cheated because they have a movie about them.
But was it really a movie about them, Jastin? Or was it about a movie about people actually liking it and not Burger King?
Well, I'm waiting on the Burger King adventure, like you said. The great BKS.
Bill and Joe go to Burger King.
Showdown, yeah. I'm waiting on that. Then it'll be fair. Then we can compare the numbers fairly after BK has had its BKM. So we need a BKM.
BKM just sounds like a Burger King bowel movement. And I feel bad for you, Jastin, because by the time they would actually have any interest in making a Burger King movie, just like you were describing, it won't be in business anymore.
So you said the movie will be about its downfall?
The movie will be about them driving at the end of the, just around all of America and never finding a Burger King.
It'll be like that Last Standing Blockbuster show.
Oh.
Yeah, that show about, that got canceled. That one. Man. All right. We done talking about fast food failures?
Yeah.
BKFs, if you will.
Oh, come on. Come on. Not BKF.
The BKDF, the Burger King downfall.
You're going to do this the whole podcast now, are you? Have I created a monster?
Yeah. On that note, here's our theme song.
Somebody will listen to me. Nobody knows anything but you. All right. Are you ready? Yes. Come on.
Cinema Slayers.
Hey, Cinefans, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Slayers podcast. I'm Sterling, and as always, I'm joined by Heather and Jastin. And tonight we are going to talk about what we liked, didn't like, and everything in between with the new movie Evil Dead Rise. We will go spoiler-free recommendations and scores, and then into a more spoiler-centric section with time codes and description to allow you to jump around in both podcast and YouTube form. And with all that, the Burger King fan himself, Jastin, what are your spoiler-free thoughts about Evil Dead Rise?
Yes, sir. BKP in the house, in the flame.
Is that just BK person?
Yeah. All right, enough about the king. Enough about royalty. We'll leave royalty alone for a second. Overall, I guess I'll start with saying that I didn't really have any anticipation for this or any real expectations. I'm familiar with the Evil Dead movies. I don't even know if I saw that the one before this. I believe that came out in 2013. I'm trying to remember if I saw that or not. I don't think I did. I remember the older ones with Bruce Campbell and everything. But this is not a franchise that I would say I'm a fan of. It's kind of one of those that I know enjoyed the movies and stuff like that, but it was never anything where I was like, oh yeah, Evil Dead, or oh yeah, Bruce Campbell. I was never one of those people. So going into this, I didn't really have any high expectations of it or anything like that. I was just kind of going in, just hoping to not waste my time and enjoy a movie. And with that attitude going in, I had a good time with this. I thought that for the most part, this was fun. I thought that it was, it had just the right amount of gore and scare factor in it. I think not having it be a kind of a continuation of what was before with the same characters and stuff like that. Now you have to forgive me if some of this is from 2013 because I have not seen that, so maybe it is a continuation of some things. But if it was, I didn't know. It seemed.
Do you want to know?
Yeah, sure.
No, none of this ties back to it.
Okay, perfect. Because I was going to say whether that's true or not, it felt like its own thing. It felt like just a standalone kind of story that involved some things that we know from Evil Dead, like the Book of the Dead, of course, and things like that. So to me, I think that was actually a smart way to do this. We just took some familiar things from Evil Dead and we put these people in a kind of a confined area. So I bet that this was fairly inexpensive to make because most of this kind of takes place in one area.
Do you want to know the budget?
Yeah, what was it?
$15 million.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, dirt cheap. Like, I think when you're thinking of movies and stuff like that, that sounds fairly inexpensive. And I could tell just because we weren't going to a lot of different places. So whether we were in a place or these were sets or whatever the case may be, it had to be fairly inexpensive because we were just kind of in this confined area. And we've seen a lot of confined area, kind of gimmicky sort of horror movies before. And I will admit that there are some that have come out that are probably better than this one. But sometimes that formula of we're in this confined space and we've got this horror that we've got to escape or get away from, or this thing that is happening weird to us and we're all in the same area together, sometimes that does lend itself to the story. The story can be faster. We don't have to have all of these dips and things like that. Sometimes a horror film can overstay its welcome when there's a lot of places you're going, a lot of moving parts, et cetera, et cetera. This, I think, benefited from this format of just kind of having everybody in this confined little space. I think it lended itself to this because we didn't have to overcomplicate anything. It's just, bam, we're hit with this problem and off we go. So I really think that served to not focus too much on any of the story elements. We're just kind of along for the ride. And that's what I think this kind of was. It starts immediately. It kind of has something that kind of just grabs your attention immediately. And then it's like, ooh, oh. And then the movie is over. And I think that made this fun, you know, and there are some things definitely about it. The movie definitely has some flaws and some things where there are some cliche things that happen. And there are obviously some things that you probably will see coming. And there are some jump scares that were predictable. But I thought for the most part, it was effective. I think that, and not to say too much, but I'll expound on it in the when we get to spoilers. But I think another thing that it was effective of doing was just the way that it did gore. Sometimes just keeping things simple is the best way to go. And sometimes when the gore is not so over the top, it kind of causes audiences to react more. I think because sometimes when we see things in movies, there are things that you see sometimes, like as far as gore and people getting cut or whatever the case may be, where you don't really know how that feels, right? Like sometimes you're looking at gore and you're a little desensitized to it because it's like, okay, well, who knows what that feels like, or there's no way I can relate to what's happening on screen. But sometimes just seeing a hand get impaled, or a foot, or an arm, or something like that. Sometimes when the gore is a little close to home, I think it's a little more effective sometimes because you kind of know what that feels like. Oh, or, if you've stepped on a nail, or if you've, sometimes there's a relatability factor when it comes to somebody getting hurt or something like that. And I think one of the most effective things about this was that this movie capitalized on that, I think, in a lot of ways. And that might be the best way I can put it without just straight up saying things that happen. But I think the movie capitalizes on that. There are some relatable elements to it that I think helped it in a way. So yeah, overall, I just thought it was a fun little horror movie. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. It doesn't do anything, I guess you could say, innovative and everything or anything like that. But I think as a standalone story, it was effective. I thought that the actors, all of the actors in this, did well with the roles that they were given. Of course, you have characters making dumb decisions. This is a horror movie. Of course, you're going to have some characters making some questionable decisions, which I'm sure we'll get into. But overall, I like the characters. I thought that all of them were fine. Everybody kind of did what they needed to do with the role that was written for them. And it pays a couple of homages to some of the old Evil Dead stuff, but didn't get so on the nose with that it was hammy or it just made me roll my eyes or anything like that. So yeah, overall, I think you could do a lot worse than this. I think it was fine. I had a pretty decent time watching this, and for the most part, I thought it was pretty fun. So yeah, not a bad impression of this movie at all from me.
Heather, what about you?
Yeah, I think, I agree with pretty much all of what you're saying, Jastin. Like I came into this movie partially worried that it was going to be one of those movies where the trailer gave everything away because the trailer to me looked amazing. It was a dope trailer and I was like really pumped for this movie after seeing it. And I was like, I just hope that that's not all of the crazy parts. It's not all the scary parts. It's not all of that. And it wasn't. They did a lot more than just what they show you in the trailers. And it paid off. So I thought it was a pretty good movie. I thought it was a fun, wild ride, of course. And I do like the simplicity of, like they made use of every space they had, and they didn't have like a whole lot of characters really in this, but everybody they did have played a really good part in this film. So I appreciated how they really just kind of used that space and used up the screen time they had in a really good way. And yeah, I think kind of talking a little bit about what you were saying, like the sound design in this movie is insane. Like the cracking and the crunching and the whatever things that you're hearing when you're seeing certain visuals on the screen, it made me wince. It made me cringe. Like it did its job in really making you feel like what that would feel like. So I completely agree with you on that aspect of it as well. I thought that the prior movie, Evil Dead, did the same thing. I actually saw it the day before I saw this movie because I actually hadn't seen it either. So, and I do think tonally it matches up more with the 2013 Evil Dead, but, yeah, and I thought that was a great movie too. So yeah, I think, it is a good standalone film. It's not like you need to see the others to kind of know what's going on here, but you know, you can appreciate it for what it is on its own. Yeah, and the fact that for me, at least, like I didn't really know any of these actors in this movie. Like, I don't think I had seen any of them in anything else before. Not to say they haven't been, but I personally haven't seen any of them in something before this. So I was just really impressed with everybody and how they did their parts. Yeah, I think that the story was, I wouldn't say it was, yeah, I mean, it is a simple story, but the way that they kind of navigate it, you know, there's a couple of backstories or a couple of underlying stories that happen, and kind of the way that they interweave it and navigate the stories throughout this movie, I think is well done. It's pretty well paced because it's a shorter movie. Yeah, I think they did that well. The gore is kind of on par with what you think it would be, considering what this movie is. Definitely some moments that, you know, are going to be very memorable for a while. But yeah, I think they did a good job with this. I thought it was a pretty good movie. Yeah, I had a good time with it. I wasn't really, I wouldn't say I was disappointed. I wasn't overwhelmed necessarily with the movie. Saying like, oh, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. But I thought it was good. You know, I thought it was a pretty solid film. Yeah, so I say, yeah, that was kind of my takeaway from it.
I used to be a very big fan of the Evil Dead franchise. And it's not like just something happened and I just was like, oh no, I can't be a fan of this anymore. No, I just kind of outgrew it a little bit, you know? But I did really like the 2013 reboot of this. I saw it in theaters. It to me felt like the first Evil Dead movie, if they actually had a budget, because the very first Evil Dead movie, The Evil Dead, did not have a budget really at all. It was like made on credit cards. You know, it was Sam Raimi and a bunch of friends from fucking college, including Bruce Campbell, just, you know, borrowing money and using credit cards and making a movie out in a cabin in the woods, you know. And so, like, to me, Evil Dead 2013 was kind of what he would have made if he had money, because it was a serious take on it. The very first The Evil Dead, while campy and kind of cheesy, mainly due to special effects and those types of things, was more because they didn't know how else to do some of the stuff. So the 2013 one kind of made me think of what it would have been if it was, you know, done by somebody that loved horror and had a budget. Because Sam Raimi traditionally doesn't really like horror. He made a horror film because they were cheap to make. So he's kind of like backdoored himself into being a sort of horror icon, but that wasn't really because he wanted to be that. And so I did like that. I do really like Evil Dead 2. I think of the original movies, Evil Dead 2 is the best. Army of Darkness kind of goes off the rails a little bit. You know, this isn't a spoiler. It's in the medieval ages. You know, it's a very weird and kind of silly movie. It's not terrible, but it's a very silly movie. You know, while Evil Dead 2 is very much a horror comedy, it's very funny. It's got a lot of slapstick to it. It's got a lot of, you know, just physical humor in it. Evil Dead 3 is another beast, which is Army of Darkness, is Evil Dead 3. But, you know, then you get the new one and it's very serious. And so then 10 years later, we now get this one. this movie ended up more or less just kind of being all right to me. There's not really, it's, and I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. It just kind of ended up being what I expected and maybe just not what I would have wanted. I think that there could have been some better choices in there. I think that there could have been, I honestly think there could have been a little bit more gore and a little bit more of that type of stuff. I know there's a bunch in this and it sounds kind of weird. It's just the way the Evil Dead movies work. I kind of expected a little more. Especially
after the 2013 one.
Yeah.
That one was
and it's funny because
super gory.
This movie has 1,700 gallons of fake blood in it, or he used that much to make this movie. You don't technically see that much because, you know, there's scenes that are filmed that aren't in it that probably have blood in them. They might have to do a couple of takes of some stuff that has fake blood in it, but they used 1,700 gallons worth of fake blood to make this movie. I expected it to be a little more, just based on how the franchise goes. But in the end, it's a very solid entry into the franchise. This one looks to possibly make more of a franchise out of it. Like I said, the budget on this movie was $15 million. Worldwide, as of right now, it's made $44. So it's a success. It's probably going to get some more movies. And Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, who are iconic parts of the series, were producers on this, and we're saying that this is probably going to hopefully lead to more on a more current basis too. Like, you know, instead of every 10 years like it is right now, maybe, you know, 2 to 4 years, we might get a new one. Another little piece of trivia about this movie. It was originally supposed to be an HBO Max original and just be on the streaming service. But the test screenings were apparently so good that they were like, fuck it, let's throw it in theaters. And, you know, good choice. Tripled its budget right now. Opening weekend, tripled its budget. There are worse things you could ever want for a movie than that be opening weekend success. So, you know, I did think some of the things in this movie were a little cliche. Some of the things were a little too predictive. And I think some of the things kind of held on to some of the iconic moments of the franchise a little too much. I know these are iconic things in this franchise, but, you know, if you're going to change up things and modernize some things, you can change that stuff too. It's fine. But in the end, ultimately, I thought it was fine. I enjoyed myself for the most part. I mean, one of the best things about this franchise is like every movie averages out to be about an hour and a half. I think the longest one in this franchise is like 97 minutes. You know?
I think this one was the longest one.
How long is this one?
Hour 37.
Yeah. So, yeah, 97 minutes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they're quick, short movies. They get in, they start their shit, and they get out. I'm fine with that. But yeah, like I for the most part, I guess I liked it. Just, you know, would have preferred some differences here and there, and I think they could have done a little more. But in the end, it's a solid entry in the franchise. Recommendations and scores?
Yeah.
Yep.
Recommendations and score.
Heather, what about you?
I do say overall, I do recommend it. I just give caution to those who easily get like queasy with gore and stuff like that, because it is a lot of that. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of horror movies and a fan of the Evil Dead movies, like I think you'll enjoy this one. I thought it was good. Yeah, I would say I mean, of the horror films more recently, it's probably up there. It's not bad. Yeah, I think it was a simple way to tell a very intense story, because it was very intense the entire time. And it was just a fun ride. And yeah, I think that it's definitely worth a watch for sure. I'm going to give it, what am I going to give this one? I'm going to give it, I'll give it 75, chomping on glass to cut your throat out of 100.
Justin, what about you?
Yeah, I feel the same way too. It was pretty fun movie. Nothing really terrible about it, honestly. I mean, nothing too crazy to where I would feel like it's a bad film or anything like that. I mean, you could definitely do a lot worse than this. And I mean, if that's what you're looking for, just a fun little horror movie that you can go see anytime. I mean, I think that this would be worth a person's time. I think you'll have some fun with this. You'll see some gruesome stuff. You'll get the horror kick that you're looking for. And then you get out of there. I mean, it's got all of that in spades. It's got the supernatural stuff. You've got your cast of characters that will feel familiar enough and everything like that, but they've got enough story to where like they're just not boring characters or just uninteresting characters. You know, they got just enough to keep this going. And then, and really the movie just gets down to the nitty gritty. When it does have a good atmosphere, the atmosphere for that they needed for this is effective. So there are a lot of good scenes. There are a lot of scenes that look great and have that horror feel and look scary and kind of really get you in the mood for what this is. It has all of that. The makeup and the special effects are good in this too. You know, for the $15 million budget that they had, I really didn't see anything that stood out as, oh, that's bad, that looks bad, or that looks, I think that everything looked all right from what I remember. So I thought all of that was good. And like I said, I think the gore was effective in its simplicity. Now, I don't know how that compares to like the last Evil Dead, or if they decided, you know, let's pin that down and go a little more simplistic with this. But I think that method was effective in this, because there were a lot of times where I felt like, yeah, maybe we could have blown up a head or cut an entire person's body off, but they chose to do these little things that I'll elaborate on later. And I think it served to make it just that much more like effective in how you felt it. I think that decision was a good one. It doesn't work for everything, but I think it worked for this. So I think that's probably one of the better decisions that they made, just with their technique, how they went about presenting this gore, I think was very effective. And more movies could probably learn from it, you know. Sometimes simple is better. Sometimes less is more in some cases. And I think this is a good example of that when it comes to the gore anyway. Other than that, yeah, the acting was good. So, I mean, can't really complain about this. We're going to go 70, taking a little off the top, a whole new meaning when you completely pull the top of somebody's head off. Exposing their cool little brains out of 100.
I think it's funny, Jastin, that you are saying like less is more and stuff like that. Because ever since like Evil Dead 2, that's not really been the mantra of the franchise. The franchise has been
funny, right?
The franchise has been fuck your mind with horror and gore. And, you know, and that's why, like I said, to me, I kind of expected more. It was a little too tame for me in that regard, which was the weird thing to change to me. Like, you'll change that, but you won't change some of these other things. That's what's weird to me in this instance. But overall, I mean, being 97 minutes, and it is violent. Don't get me wrong; it's a violent movie. It's it's got your Deadites. It's got your Book of the Dead. It's got super sneaky cameos by Bruce Campbell. It's got some references to the older franchises. One of them I really enjoyed, and this isn't a spoiler. I kind of had a little chuckle when they dropped the pizza boxes. They were Henrietta's pizzas. Big fans of the franchise will know that Henrietta is the dead woman in the basement in The Evil Dead 2. That's even her picture. That's the picture of Henrietta, which is Ted Raimi, Sam Raimi's brother. That's him in the makeup for the woman in The Evil Dead 2. So it's actually her, like him as her picture on the pizza box. And so, yeah, that gave me a little chuckle because it's Henrietta's pizza, But yeah, I just I was expecting a little more than what this movie ultimately delivered, but it still delivers a lot. I think it's funny that, I'm expecting more because of what this franchise typically does, but for you guys, it was for Jastin was enough, and for Heather was a little more than, she's used to seeing. So in a lot of ways, this kind of has, it depends on your, I guess, violence or your gore threshold, if you will. Or what you want from gore. You know what I mean? I think I do tend to lean a little more into wanting more gore than you two. I mean, that was kind of a big thing about the movie Megan. Like, I wanted way more gore than we got in Megan. And you guys were fine with it, So in those types of movies, I tend to want more. So I kind of feel a little sad that the movie I felt that was going to give it to me didn't quite get there. But other than that, I mean, it's solid. 65. 65 tattoo needles almost going in your eyeball out of 100. We have been so clean with our Cinescores lately. This is our official Cinescore, and this is a 70.
Okay.
We've really, between Mario, Renfield, and this, we've had like one person like say what it is, and our scores be so on the other side of it that we always average to the person in the middle score. So, yeah, we did that with Mario, we did it with Renfield, and we did it with this. More or less. So.
Yep.
Spoilers?
Yeah.
Yep.
Spoilers.
I'll go into a little bit of lore, Evil Dead lore that is just presented in this movie. So it's not really going to be spoilers or anything like that, but just how they kind of present some of the stuff in this movie when it ties into the greater Evil Dead franchise. One thing I did really like about what they added to the lore in this is on the recording when they're talking about the Necronomicon or the Book of the Dead or the whatever De Morte or whatever they called the books. It changes in like every version of the movie. They say that there are 3 volumes of it. There are 3 books. And that weirdly ties this movie to the whole franchise in doing so. Because the book in Evil Dead 2013 is not the same book as in Sam Raimi's franchise. And by saying that in this actually says that the Sam Raimi franchise is one book, the Evil Dead 2013 is one book, is the second book, and this is the third.
Okay. I didn't think about that.
So it
Yeah.
actually ties them all together by just having that little nod. This is the first Evil Dead movie outside of Army of Darkness that doesn't take place in a cabin. Evil Dead, or The Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, and Evil Dead, which is the 2013 one, all take place in a cabin. 2 of them were at the same cabin, but yeah. So that's, this is the first one outside of Army of Darkness that doesn't take place in a cabin. But it still kind of lends itself nicely to what the franchise is good at, which is that isolatedness. Like isolating yourself to like a location. But changing it up enough to where it's not just a cabin in the woods again. It gave it a little bit of a different flair to it, which I did like. To kind of give some examples of where I kind of, or I guess some more lore stuff. Chainsaw. I mean, this is the 5th movie out of 5 that has a fucking chainsaw in it. Doing chainsaw shit. That's something I would have changed. I would have actually not used a chainsaw in this movie. I think of all the things to keep and drop, I think it'd be nice to maybe change it up a little bit. Not have a chainsaw. I'm not saying this movie is worse for having a chainsaw. I'm just saying, I think with what you're changing with it, change that too. Why not? Also shotguns. Shotguns are very big in the franchise. But outside of all that, like some of the things I would have changed is that one of the things I've loved about the Evil Dead movies, as much as it is about physical violence and gore, there's an element of like mental gore that they've kind of had, which is that fucked upness, them doing things to each other that is just so cringy that it kind of rocks you to your core. And in most of the movies, that comes through a dismemberment of some sort. And in most movies, it's somebody having their hand or arm cut off. It's a very big reoccurring theme in this franchise. So that was one weird thing to me. Like, you got rid of somebody losing a hand, but you kept the chainsaw. But where I would have taken that, though, is, like I was saying, there's that scene where they've got the tattoo needle. It's like right next to somebody's eye. And then they turn last minute and it gets their cheek or forehead, or whatever. It hits their face instead. I actually kind of thought it would have been nice if that was a tattoo needle to the eyeball.
It would have been really rough to see, but yeah, I get what you mean.
I would have liked that. Then there's the scene they show in the trailer where it's the cheese grater to the leg. I thought that could have been more. Like, it ended up just being some marks. Nah, I wanted that deadite fucking grinding and it just oozing blood and slushing out with like little bits of shredded flesh out of it. You know,
I did actually kind of expect that too from that.
Of them just like taking it and just thought that would have been nice. It's kind of things like that they did. Like the whole glass coming out of the throat. Well, a nice little effect. I kind of wanted some more glass out of the throat. I wanted that deadite to kind of talk with like a very fucked up voice, because the vocal cords in the throat are so gnarled with fucking glass. So it's things like that. Like, that's what I mean. Like, that's what I was kind of expecting out of this movie. Because the franchise has kind of taught me, especially whenever this thing goes serious, those elements get amplified. And this, I felt like they took them back a little bit. And then I do think it's slightly disingenuous whenever the director does talk about the blood in this movie, because so much of that blood is just a Shining reference. I would have preferred that coming out of people. blood filling an elevator, while that was a cool scene, I would have been more impressed if 1,700 gallons of blood came out of people and not just been in an elevator. Because so much of that was that elevator, it. So, those are some of the things that kind of disconnected me with having a long-standing tie to the franchise. Even if I haven't been as big of a fan, going back and be like, man, the Evil Dead franchise, I love it. It's my favorite. You know what I mean? I haven't been that big of a fan recently, but I have long-standing ties to the franchise. At one point, I even had the collector's edition of Evil Dead 2 that came in a case that was the Necronomicon. So I have a long-standing history with the franchise, so I kind of wish those were some of my expectations for this movie going into it, that some of that stuff would have been more amplified or more visceral or more just grimy. And I kind of felt like there should have been more people in this movie. It's an apartment building. They're on the 5th floor or something like that. There's more floors of people that could have been deadites and doing shit and going crazy. I think I would have liked to see that a little more. And now, the final thing I'm going to talk about is probably one of the more controversial things I'll probably ever say on this podcast. The wrong kid lived. I think to truly drive home the evil, visceral nature of the Book of the Dead, you gotta take out the little kid. One of the older kids should have lived, and the little kid should have died. And I
actually kind of think it should have been Danny to live.
And I mean that just from the perspective of the way we would view that as a viewing audience, is that would be more fucked up, because an older kid dying is not considered as bad in a movie as a younger kid dying.
Yeah.
As weird as that is to actually say, that's the way our society views those things. An older kid dying is nowhere near as tragic as a younger kid dying. So I think to really get that mental fucked upness, I think you have the little kid die. And I just say that because this is also the first movie to have children in it.
Yeah.
So there's
I kind of get that because, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's no other comparative points from the other movies. You know what I mean? This is the first one to do it.
Yeah. Because I kind of think along the same lines of the mental, messing with your mind part of it, having Danny be the one that lived, because essentially Danny's the reason that this kind of happened. And so for Danny to be the one that lives and sort of has to live with what's happened would be a little bit more of that mental messed up thing. So that's why I feel like maybe it should have been Danny.
They kind of followed the rules with that. The person that unleashes the Necronomicon is typically is the last human to die.
Yeah.
Which
is nice that they did follow that. Yeah.
That's just kind of a tradition in a way. They're one of the last people to actually bite it typically. Which is kind of that's the morality of it all. You're the reason all this happened. You get to see almost most of your friends or family or whoever die because of you before you get your comeuppance. Yeah. Those are kind of some of my little complaints with it, but overall though, it's still, it's a fairly effective scene when that tattoo needle's right there by the eyeball. You could hear everybody's assholes just puckering up in the theater. waiting for it to happen. You know,
I was nervous. I was so nervous about that.
same with the cheese grater. You know what I mean? As soon as it hits the leg, everybody's just waiting for it to be the most fucked up thing they've ever seen. And then it's just kind of, you know, some lines. It's not that bad. I feel like I could take a cheese grater to the leg now based on this movie. Not that worried about it. So those are just some of my thoughts coming from somebody that has long-standing ties with the franchise. And where I was kind of expecting and where this movie kind of let me down because of that. I understand that those are my expectations, but I feel like those are the expectations the franchise gave me. And so I can't at this point take this movie outside of the franchise because, you know, it's tied into them. It's, you know, it's a part of that franchise, whether it likes it or not. And I kind of feel like it likes it. It tied itself in. So, Jastin, what about you?
Cool. So for me, not really having those kind of investments from the previous movie and stuff like that, you know, for me, it was just, okay, what does this movie have for me? I thought that the beginning and how they did that, I thought that was a pretty strong beginning. You know, I'm big on that. I think that sometimes the beginning of a movie is so important because it sets the tone for everything else that's going to happen. And I don't hear enough people comment on that or notice that or appreciate when like a film starts with grabbing your attention effectively and then doing something that just that maybe makes you go, oh, wow, okay, it's going to be this kind of movie. I definitely think this film started strong, you know, and they started with it being in the woods in a cabin. So that was a nice little homage to some of the things that you've seen before. And then sort of finding out as it's telling the story that was actually something that happens later. And what you are seeing is something that occurred in the past. So that was, you know, a little storytelling method that they used. So even though what we were watching is something that happens later in the time that is the story of the film, I thought that beginning was effective. And whenever the the top of the head of that girl got ripped off, I was like, oh, damn. You know, I didn't see that coming, you know? So I was like, okay, movie. Okay. You know, you got my attention. So I thought that was a strong start for this movie. I think it kind of gave you right away what this was kind of going to be. So I thought that was just a very good attention grabbing scene for this. And as the movie is going along and it's developing characters and things like that, I thought that everybody was pretty effective too in their acting roles. I think that that the two actresses, let me go ahead and get their names. And I'm not too familiar with them either. Lily Sullivan, who played Beth, and then Elisa Sutherland, who played Ellie. I thought that they were good. I thought that both of them were good. I think that they did feel like family members. They felt like sisters. I liked the conversations that they had. I complained about the last movie that we did. The
Renfield.
Renfield movie, that sometimes the dialogue was so expository that it was obvious that that's what it was doing. It was expositing and it didn't feel like real conversations. That movie could learn a lesson from this movie, because the conversations that they have, the sisters having and revealing little things about themselves that maybe that you could tell they were uncomfortable talking about, but still kind of revealing a little by little and just kind of having those uncomfortable conversations. They felt like real conversations, but they were effective in also giving us little story tidbits about them. So I want to give a kudos to that as well. They were able to have effective conversations in this, but still let me know what the characters were about. So just again, another little thing that this movie does, that serves it, that just makes it that much more better in its quality. And I think that this movie, that's a good microcosm for this movie. That this movie does a lot of the little things right. And I think that maybe that's why it ultimately winds up being effective or good, or why I think most people are enjoying it, because the people that I was in the theater with were getting a kick out of this man. And anytime there was a hand getting stabbed or a cheese grater to the leg or something like that, I didn't hear a lot of disappointment. I heard oohs and ohs and people cringing and going, oh man, or oh, and it even got me a few times. And I think, and this is what I mean by sometimes being more simple than being more over the top with the gore. I mean, sometimes you can look at a scene and you can look at, and this is kind of also something I've learned in pro wrestling also. Like sometimes the more relatable the display of pain is, the more invested and the more effective it is in getting over with the audience. Is kind of a lesson that I've learned. Like, not everybody knows what a flipping pile driver feels like, but sometimes just seeing a finger bent back all the way or seeing a leg twisted a certain way, you just think about that and you go, oh man, what that must feel like. And sometimes that has more of an effect than this big, like, super thing or this explosion of blood or whatever the case may be. This movie was like Burger King, if you will.
So I should change my score to being a 30.
Stop it. Yeah, thanks, Heather. You saw what I did there?
Yeah, so all right, I need to readjust the Cinescore. Hold on. You keep going.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. No, okay, seriously. But this movie was king at doing those simple things. Like, and I think what made it effective is that you could show a lot of it. Like, they showed a lot of it. Like, you saw the blade going through the hand. You saw the cheese grater grinding into the leg and stuff like that. And I think that, and good on you, Heather, pointing out like the sound editing and the sound the sound design, and that was very effective too, because anytime those sounds meshed with what you were seeing visually, I heard reactions from the audience. They were reacting big time, and it made me kind of go, you know what? This movie is doing simple gore effectively. It's getting reactions. I bet it was the same way in that screen testing that Sterling was talking about earlier. Sometimes it's just more effective when it's things we can sort of understand or things we can sort of relate to. People have pricked, you've probably pricked your hand before or cut yourself before or had something, had your, hit something against your leg or got your leg kind of stickers and stuff, your feet. Sometimes, man, seeing those things get cut in a movie or stabbed in a movie or something like that goes a longer way than seeing somebody's head get cut off or seeing whole arms or limbs getting chopped off. Sometimes that's not as relatable as seeing just those little things happen. And I think that was something that this movie excelled at. Instead of going like super big for this big, super gory, I'm going to hit you and the blood's just going to explode out. it chose to just kind of, we're just going to go right inside the arm and just show the blade passing through and just let the actress scream, have an excruciating yelp, and just let that sound and that visual and that yelp hit you. And I think all of that was done so effectively in this. I cannot state how effective that was. And they did it several times in the movie. And it just made, I think, this little adventure that much more effective. So even though I get what you're saying, Sterling, about the fact that the amount of gore was less, I actually think it might have served this movie because it was that way. I can't really say with certainty if things were more over the top, or if there was more, or if you just saw gallons of blood spilling everywhere, if it would have necessarily been more effective than just seeing those simple things happening to people. Or like y'all were talking about when the glass was being chewed by her, when she was chewing the glass, and you're seeing it just subtly pass through, and the crunching sound, and I don't know if more blood necessarily helps that, or just seeing the glass pass through and hearing it with those sounds and seeing that visual was enough. It felt like it was enough, and we may never know, but I think the movie chose that style for a reason because it did it often. And I think that was, to me, one of the more impressive things about it. It could have went, I think, overboard with that, but I think toning it down a bit actually helped it. For me, anyway, just in a bubble, seeing and hearing the reactions that I heard, I felt like it was effective in how it was able to do that. As far as just some of the other things that happened, yeah, I thought that the elevator full of blood, I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was another cool visual that they had. And I didn't mind the chainsaw. I was like, oh, the chainsaw, of course, we got to have it. You know, it's Evil Dead. So we got that little scene in there with the chainsaw. And I don't know, maybe I would have felt the way you did about it if it was excessive or if it was used a lot. But, you know, they saved it to the end. It was in the final kill. You know, and so she got to like do the final kill with it and walk off with it and stuff like that. And I think for me, that was okay because it didn't, just like the movie's runtime, I don't think it overstayed its welcome. I think that if that had been earlier in the film and we're going back and forth to this chainsaw and stuff like that, I think maybe I would have been more annoyed by it. But hey, one time, let's use it in the finale. And boy, what a finale that was, with all the bodies sort of melding together. It looked like something off of Resident Evil or Silent Hill or something. You know, it just kind of reminded me of something like that. But I thought that was a very effective finale scene and the final kill and everything like that. As far as the kids and everything, I thought that the kids did well. Of course, we had kids making questionable decisions, like the little girl opening the door for our possessed mom, which she did a great job too. I especially loved, before I get back to that, I especially loved the eeny, meeny, miny, mo scene. All of that was great. Like, when she got in, when she was behind the shadows, you couldn't completely see her. All you could make out was just kind of sort of a silhouette kind of in the dark there. I love the lighting in that scene. I love how they did that. I love the eeny, meeny, miny and the hand coming out of the darkness and pointing to different people and seeing the different reactions. That was just another great scene. And I mean, come on, the eeny, meeny, miny, mo, that's like a timeless, just traditional. Again, taking some simple shit, but just making it very, very effective with filming techniques and things like that. And and for me, I've always been a fan of that. I'm kind of the opposite of you, Sterling. You know, my favorite horror, I think the best horror movie is Halloween, the first one, like the original one. And a big reason why I like that is because it was doing techniques just like this movie was. Keeping it real simple. It doesn't have to be big on gore, but it's got to be big on visuals and just capturing your imagination and using those simple techniques and maximizing those simple things with your camera, with what you're doing, with putting things in focus, out of focus, stuff like that. I love when a horror movie does that shit. I guess I get giddy for that kind of shit. And this movie, I think, did a lot of those simple things effectively. And for me, that gets me going a little bit more than some of these kind of over the top, kind of there's blood everywhere type of gore stuff that you sometimes see in those movies, which sometimes that can be good too. But I think it's just all about how it's done and how effective it is. Like, and I think for this, for being the simple plot that it was, the confined space that it was, the limited amount of characters that you had, the sort of simple format that this story follows, I think keeping those elements simplistic as well lended itself to a cohesiveness that this movie just seemed to have throughout. And I think it helped the flow of this. It kept the intensity up with the acting and the atmosphere and kind of what the characters were going through. And then when it was time to do gore stuff, it was stuff that we can that's more relatable. It was pain that you could kind of feel and see and kind of understand, I think, and comprehend a little bit more. And I definitely felt that in how people were reacting as they were watching the scene. So those are the main things I wanted to say. I think that this movie is definitely a great example of just taking the simple things, but making the most out of them is sometimes more effective than doing all of these big, super over the top things that we sometimes see in these horror movies.
Heather, what about you?
Yeah, a couple of things that each of you said. And Jastin, it is interesting hearing your perspective because you didn't see the one prior to this. So just like hearing your first sort of reaction to the style of movie that they do with this one was kind of cool. But no, I do agree about how the first scene or the opening scene set the tone for this movie because it just went into it right away. And I thought that was a really well done part. But my only thing with that is I think that there could have been a better way at the end to kind of bring it back to that girl that was at the cabin. Like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. I just feel like because we already know that she's going to get, what would you call it? Infected by these, I don't know, she's going to become a deadite. So we already know that's going to happen. And so I just feel like you have to kind of make that scene, I guess, I don't know if I wanted it to be a little bit more surprising how it comes up or how she, carries this with her or what. But I just feel like it kind of lacked the intensity in that moment that I wanted it to of, seeing her at the end and then what happens right before she goes on her trip. So, I mean, I might have changed that, but at the same time, I don't really know how I would have changed it. Like, I don't really know what would have made it better. But that scene specifically, I was just kind of like, okay, this is probably the least intense scene of the entire movie because you already kind of know what's going to happen. But I don't know. That's just being nitpicky though. But yeah, I do agree that it started out very strong and then the pacing and the intensity factor, at least for me, it was consistent the whole way through. Because, you know, you're just kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. And so I'm just like on the edge the whole time. And, sort of to, you know, a point that you made, Sterling, about like just what you're expecting and your level of, tolerance, I guess, or threshold for gore. I think that is a good point, because for me, I already I cringe and I wince so easily at stuff that for me, this felt like, okay, if it actually was more, man, I would have just been super insanely disturbed like for a week or something. Like, you know what I mean? But like I do think they did just the right amount, because it did do all those things that it would make me do, but it didn't overdo it to the point where I'm like, that was too much. I couldn't even focus on anything else in the movie. So I feel like it was just the right amount. But I could see what you mean, because also compared to the 2013 movie, I feel like it is much less. Like there's some scenes in the 2013 movie that are just like, wow, like what are they doing right now? But yeah, I do think that it got a little bit predictable as far as who was going to survive towards the end there. And I do agree again, Sterling, about how I don't want the youngest child to have been killed, but I do get what you mean about like, she's the youngest one. She's the one that probably nobody would bet on being the one who dies. So I think that would have been such a twist and such a get a hold on people in this movie. But I don't know. And I get what you mean about how the person who ends up, you know, using the book is, you know, the last human that lives. And I do actually like that they stuck with that tradition here, but I don't know. I just feel like something about like if Danny had been the one to survive and just that mental anguish he would have of knowing what he did and that he got his entire family killed, basically. I just think that would have been an interesting way to end it. But I did like the lead. I forget what her name is in the movie, but the sister. I thought she was great. I thought she did a really great job as kind of like the lead in this, the lead protagonist, if you will, of this movie. I think that, yeah, she made, I don't think any of her decisions that she made, I was against. You know, I think she did the best she could, considering they're trapped in this apartment with her sister, who is not her sister. And, you know, I think she tried to do everything she could, except for my one complaint on that would be when she's in that room and she decides to listen to the record thing, you know, when she gets the headphones on and she's listening to that. I was just like, I'm sorry, I wouldn't be putting headphones on. Like, I would just need to know what's going on around me, like, especially with what's going on right now. And, you know, I think something major had just happened. Yeah, I think with the middle kid, Bridget, I think was her name. Like, I think that had just happened, unless I'm mistaking the order of things, but she had just, you know, turned and done some craziness, you know, and then suddenly she's like, okay, I got to hear what this is. And she puts headphones on and her back's to everything. And I'm like, no. I wouldn't be doing that in this situation. I would be like, I don't care if she's like trying to be like, I don't want the kids to hear what it is. Like, they've seen way worse in front of them. So headphones off, like, you need to be aware of your surroundings in this particular situation. And, you know, Danny gets completely just mauled while she has these headphones on. And then that little, you know, her sister's crawling down the little vent into the room. And I'm just like, no, that was probably the only decision I would say about hers that I would be like, yeah, no, do that differently. That was a terrible call. Like, and I think for me, I would just be like every other second would be looking behind me, just worried that something was there. knowing what's happened in this house prior to this or this apartment. So yeah, but I mean, the way that scene played out was really intense though, and really cool. Like seeing the sister Ellie, you know, coming down from the vent, and just like the really, like, you just don't know what's going to happen most of the time in this movie. Like, you know, eventually what's going to happen, but getting to that point in the movie, the journey is just nonstop. And I really appreciated that because, like you guys have said, the less is more sort of mentality of at least the storyline and the simplicity of, you know, just being bound to this more isolated area was really good. I do slightly disagree that I don't really think there needed to be more people. I get what you mean because there are several floors and all this stuff. And like, I also don't know how anybody else in that building wasn't hearing what was happening on this, whatever floor they were on. But you know, our girl at the end obviously was there in the building with all of that. So I'm just kind of like, how did nobody notice something crazy going on? But, anyway, but yeah, so, but I do think that, you know, they did have a few outside people that came into it that played a you know, a good enough part for me to be like, okay, they've expanded it, but they didn't really need to expand it more than that because it was about this family. And I do agree that the conversations seemed realistic to a family dynamic, and I appreciated that as well. Especially when it comes to horror movies, because there are so many times horror movies are really bad at that in-between dialogue or that exposition or that how are we going to tell this backstory or whatever, you know? So I thought that they did that really well. Yeah, I think, and I liked that the mom, Ellie, she wasn't portrayed as this like perfect, you know, put together, you know, housewife mom. Like she was a very, you know, I'm a mess. My life is falling apart. You know, my kids have all these different interests and it's loud in here. And I'm like trying to get my stuff together. You know, I liked they portrayed her that way because I feel like that is when you have 3 kids and you are kind of a single mom at that point, that seems way more realistic to probably what her situation was at the time. So I thought that was a nice way to sort of show what her life and what her personality was like in that moment. So that was really well done too. But yeah, the elevator scene was really cool. I also thought of The Shining with that. I also thought of It Chapter 2 with that, with all the blood from the bathroom stall or whatever. But yeah, it was a very cool scene, but I thought I saw it coming, sort of. Like the emphasis that they put on the elevator was very great. And so you knew something important was about to happen in that elevator. What else? I mean, I feel like that's kind of the beauty of this movie is like, there's not a lot to break down in the sense of like understanding what happened. Like, and that's something I guess that these movies in general kind of do, where you're like, no, it did what it meant to do. It knew exactly what it was doing. It did what it wanted to do, and it was effective, you know, every time. And this one is not really any exception to that. So yeah, they did it really well. And another thing that you said, Sterling, that actually kind of makes me appreciate the movie a little bit more is the fact that you pointed out that they connected all the stories with the volumes of the books, because I didn't even think about that. But that is really cool, because then it almost feels like, well, these might not be connected characters, but it's almost like that's what's happening in this part of the world, and this is what's happening in this person's world because of the book that they found. So I think that is actually a really cool way to sort of connect this and have it be in the same universe, but it doesn't have to be the same characters throughout every single movie. Also, what was the Bruce Campbell cameo that you mentioned? I don't think I noticed.
One of the recordings, you hear a guy say, "No, don't read that. It's the Book of the Dead." That's Bruce Campbell.
Oh, that's him. Okay.
And also,
I didn't know that.
The scene where the mom bites the guy's eye out.
Yeah.
The sound effect is Bruce Campbell eating an apple.
Is it really? That's funny.
Yeah.
I like that. That scene got me too. I was like, that's just absolutely disgusting. Like, spit it out into the guy's mouth. Oh, there was so many very cringy parts of this movie.
See, and I think that's why that's why I'm so down with some of those parts of this movie. None of those scenes got to me.
Yeah, but I feel like your tolerance is way higher than mine.
Too. I want to feel the feeling.
I mean, did any of them make you feel that?
No.
The last one?
The 2013 one, there's a couple of scenes that got me. And it like lightly, ever so lightly. Like I got like a little inkling of it. Like it was like I was flashing back to like when I was like 6 and movies made me feel that way. And I want to feel that too, guys.
Yeah.
And if I feel that way, if it gets to the point to where I start to cringe and go, ooh, shit, you're going to feel it too.
Yeah, that's probably very true. Yeah. I mean, and I don't know, Jastin, like what your, tolerance of it is, but like, what were the parts in this one that made you kind of like squirm?
Well, my tolerance, I don't know, that's kind of weird to talk about it. Like, what's my level of,
what is your gore threshold?
Honestly, I don't know, because I've seen just about everything and watched a lot of foreign films. I've seen like all kinds of crazy stuff on film, and I can just sit through it and be like, all right, cool. For me, it's less about what I'm seeing or the amount of blood or anything like that. And it's just more about how it serves the story. I'm just a story guy.
That's fair.
When it comes to horror and atmosphere and setting and timing. For me, it's the timing and the story and what are we trying to do? And I can only judge it just based on how effective it is. I'm probably going to react more if I think it's more effective, or if I think it's, or if I think it serves the purpose of what the film is trying to do. Because there are some times when I could see 1 million heads get cut off and just not even blink and be like, okay, that's the 5th decapitation in this movie, but then I could see it happen one time where it's slow and the sound is good and you hear the guy yelping and then the head, it just comes completely off. And it's like, oh man, that was very, very effective. That's, I don't know if that explains anything of what you were saying, but to me, I react more based on the effectiveness of the scene. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So it could have 0 gore or it could be a ton of gore. And I'm going to react based on what the scene is trying to do. Sometimes there's a lot of blood and stuff like that, but it's done artistically, and that gets me going sometimes. And it's like, oh man, look how they so artfully shot that blood spraying on the wall or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's done in a very beautiful way where I can appreciate the beauty of the gore. And then other times I'm like, okay, I just scratch my head like, okay, what were we really trying to do here? What purpose did this serve? And so sometimes the gore doesn't make me cringe or anything. It just makes me scratch my head and go, I mean, WTF? like, what are we doing here? You know what I'm saying? So to me, the more it's going to be more effective if it's effective in the scene, which is why I appreciated the gore in this, because I thought it was all very effective. I think what they were doing matched what the tone of this was, what the scope of this was. I think given the scope of this, we're in a small place, we're in a confined area, we've got this book. And we don't need 100 other demons or this, that, and the other. It's one book. We said one ritual, one person got possessed, and we've got just a few people that are dealing with this. Simple. So I feel like it's got a match. So I think I liked it more because it all matched, man.
The funny thing is
that's what I liked about it.
The funny thing is you're saying the plot of almost every single Evil Dead movie, though. Like, they're all very isolated. It's small settings. It starts with one person. A few other people get possessed as it spreads through them. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's so many of these movies. Like I said, there's only one movie that does not follow that trend, and that's Army of Darkness. Every other movie follows that trend.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So those aspects I get with it. It's just, to me, I wanted there to be like a slightly more expanse on it. And plus, like I said, I've seen versions of this where they do amp up the gore, and it still fits with tonally what they're going with it.
Yeah.
But I will say this, Jastin, I do agree with you, though, that it has to serve a purpose.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it just has to be gory, because I've watched tons of movies that are gory and I'm bored out of my fucking mind, because it's just, it's gore for gore's sake. I like the Evil Dead gore because not only is it meant to serve physical pain as part of the story, there's also the mental torment that is added with it from the demonic aspects of it and the psychological toll that stuff is taking on the characters that are not possessed. Whether it be that they're physically just getting slowly broken down by the amount of physical torture they're taking, or the psychological torture they're experiencing by seeing their loved ones go through it. Even though they're possessed and it's not technically their loved one feeling the pain, they're still seeing the body of their loved one be
going through
this massive amounts of physical damage type of thing. It has to have that story element, because like one very recent thing is like the Terrifier movies. Especially the second one recently came out and all this other stuff. It's got oodles and oodles of gore, but it's just gore to go, look how fucked up this guy is. He's cutting people in half. He's a bad guy. Whoa. And I'm just like, okay.
Like, why do I care about it?
Yeah, this means nothing to me.
And I think that that is a good point that you both make, because like specifically a scene that sticks out to me in this movie is the scene with Bridget, the middle child, who after she turns and she's like squatting on the counter, she turns around, she's eating the glass, and like that entire scene was very effective, because it is like it has to do with how they do the scene and how it served the story in that moment. Like, this child that is like completely not herself, and the creepy way that she's speaking even, and like just the fact that she's eating this glass and it's like she's not even feeling anything going down her throat when we could see what's happening. And just like the talking to her aunt about like whatever she said about like, oh, I don't, I hate it when I have things in my stomach, or whatever it was she said, like just really, it was so creepy and intense, that whole scene. And I think that that's a perfect example of like, it wasn't necessarily super gory in that moment, but they were doing some very things that you're like, that's painful to me to watch what's happening.
Because there's and just to add to your point, and I think the reason why is because there's some real relatability in that gore. You know what it's like to eat something and it gets stuck in your throat, or to chew something, or to get cut. These are things, how it is to chew something and then something, or maybe you're chewing something and then there's some, you kind of bite something that that you didn't anticipate and it kind of hurts or whatever. I think everybody has felt something like that before. So you're just imagining. So you're watching this person chew glass and you're thinking about that time your mouth hurt because you had something in it or something like that, or the throat. And all of that is relatable. You know, that's a relatable pain. And you're thinking about that. And you're also looking at the scene. And like you said, the creepiness and everything like that. And that equals an effective scene. Sometimes that is more effective than if she would have just took a glass bottle and just freaking just threw, stabbed it into her forehead, and it's just sticking out of her forehead, and she's like, or said something or whatever.
Yeah.
It was the methodical chewing, and it's you thinking about that time. That's the effectiveness can sometimes be the effectiveness of simple gore. You've felt something like that before. Or at least that's what how I kind of interpreted it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think that's why the sound design of this movie plays a huge part in what makes it so effective, because it's loud in the moments that it needs to be loud, but it's at least in the theater I was in, it felt extremely loud in certain moments when you're just like, oh, but hearing the glass crunch, or hearing bones crunching and breaking and just all the sounds that they do to make you as if you're in that moment feeling that, or there while it's happening or whatever it may be. That is such a huge part. And I've never really thought about it before, how something like sound design can be so effective in your experience of a movie like this. It really does it. And I mean, and I've seen a lot of crazy movies too. I've seen both Terrifier movies. I've seen all the Saw movies. I've seen a lot of crazy things too. And yeah, it always makes me cringe. And I guess I'm not, completely desensitized to it yet. I don't know. But I think it is the fact that the way that they kind of play on your emotion or the mentality of the people in the scene, that also makes it so effective with it's simple, but it's not at the same time. It doesn't have kind of like what you said earlier, Jastin, it doesn't have to overdo it with selling you on what's happening. It's in the moment that the people on screen are finding out, that moment that the aunt finds out that the middle child has something wrong with her. We find that out at the same time, exactly how bad it is. So we also don't know what to expect when she's not turned around on that counter yet, right? We're in that moment with her of what am I about to see right now? I have no idea what to expect. And you feel that because you're in that same moment with her. And I thought that was really well done. But yeah, that's pretty much the only additional thoughts I had, beyond what you guys already said. But yeah, I think the best word really for this movie is, effective in what it wanted to do and doing it to where you felt it. You felt what they were trying to do. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, I agree with a lot of that though. I mean, the sound design's amazing in this. I thought the special effects were great in it. Especially whenever you find out it's 15 million. Because cheap special effects, you can always kind of tell. The whatever's digitally there looks like it's not there completely. It's always the lighting of the special effect is a little bit different than the lighting in the room. So it doesn't quite line up a little bit. This is relatively seamless. There's not any given point where you're just oh, special effect. Oh, that's especially the scene, mom possessed climbing on the ceiling out of the bathtub. Very good. Very fact. That's not all practical. Some of it is, but it's not all practical. They do a very good job of making it look like she's in that room with those people doing that shit. So I give it that credit. And also, I do find it incredibly smart that the one thing that was going to be the most special effect heavy, which was when all three of the people combined into one demon to chase her down, they hide it in the dark.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Very well.
And you don't feel cheapened by that because it's still you see the outline of it. You know, you get like glimpses of parts of it here and there, but they never go fully look at this thing. Because
that's
it
true.
would lose its effectiveness because they probably don't have the budget to render that as well as they did the other things. So I will say this, the director, the producers, whoever, those people were incredibly smart with how they did that because it kept its effectiveness and it doesn't snap you out of it by looking fake in the end.
I think in general, their use of shadow in this movie is really well done. Yeah. Like even the mom, when she comes back from first getting, you know, turned or whatever you want to call it, like she's in the shadows for so much of that. And like, you just don't see it full on. And it's really well done. And you're right. I didn't even think about that, but you only catch the glimpses of the 3-headed monster thing. And like,
and you see its shadow,
it makes it going more down the
intense. Like walking, you see like parts of it. No, that was incredibly smart doing it that way.
Yeah.
Because it would,
because it also does add to the intensity of the story and the situation.
And it would have snapped you out of it if you saw this fake ass monster at the end of the movie. It's the climax. It's what this whole movie's been building to, and you see a fake ass fucking monster in the middle of it. It would have snapped you right out at the most pinnacle part of the movie.
Shout out Signs, but yeah.
Lesser directors have gone and fucked their whole movie up by showing the shit at the end. So I give this guy credit. Like, I guess that kind of leans into what you're saying, Jastin, of holding back. At least, you know, to me, I agree with that. You held back the
restraint of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was smart, you know, because I mean, and I guess maybe that is something that's the credit of this movie is, while yes, I would have wanted a more visually visceral aspect to a lot of these things. But sometimes doing that puts you a little too close to torture porn. That version of horror we got at the 2005-ish, when torture porn was the big fucking rage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
I get what you're saying with that. That's very true.
And maybe that's why I liked this more, because it was there was more meaning and significance to what they were doing.
So maybe holding back was his way of going, let's not dip our toe into that. Because that's a fine line. And if you're smart enough to trust yourself enough to go, I don't know if we get up to that line, I might cross it. And I don't want to cross it. So let's give ourselves like 5-foot buffer. Let's not even get that close to the line. Let's stay enough away from it that we don't dip our, toes over. Maybe that's why he did that. And, because he maybe realized, like I said, to himself, if we get too close, I don't trust myself to not go too far. And maybe that's what he did. And if that's the case, kudos to this guy. Because I'll take this over just torture porn any day. Because only a handful of movies have gone straight torture porn and actually been effective.
Yeah, very true. And I'm kind of cyclical with that stuff. Like, it needs to be, sometimes the torture porn, I guess, can be okay. But like you said, it's got to be effective, and it probably has to be the right day and time, and I got to be in the right mood for it. Maybe after so long of just seeing the simple stuff and not seeing enough blood, I might crave more blood. But I guess right now, this movie just hit the spot.
And that's fair.
I ordered, I left, and I was full, and it was like, yeah, man, that hit the spot. I am no longer hungry. It hit the spot right now. But I don't know. Ask me in another 5 or 6 months. I might need some, I might need an elevator's worth of gore all over the movie.
You might need an unrated cut of this movie where they amp it up a little bit.
Yeah, I might need something a little more. I mean, and that's just really the truth of what it is, man. Like, it's just like, movies, other movies and stuff too. Sometimes you want some story driven, heavy, deep stuff. And sometimes you just want to watch some stupid shit. Like, I don't know if y'all are that way, but I certainly am.
Yeah,
So
like the
right
Mario
now,
movie.
yeah, exactly. Like sometimes you just want something simple. Boom, 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 boom. A lot of lights, a lot of colors. I don't need everything to make sense. I don't want everything explained to me. I don't want a deep dive of the brothers. Just give me the damn video games. That's all I'm wanting right now. Bam,
Isn't it
done.
nice though when you get that blend of both though? And I'm not trying to knock Mario for this. I'm just saying, like in general, when you get like those big bright colors that kind of give it that feeling of just a simple movie, but then it's also got depth. So depending on your mood, if you want depth, you can watch that movie, and if you also just want a good time, you can watch the same movie.
Yes.
I'm saying that in regards to something like Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. You can actually get both from the same movie. And I'm just, like I said, I'm not trying to knock another movie from it. I'm just trying to, once again, talk about how great Puss in Boots is, because I wasn't a part of that episode. I was sick. I had like 103-degree fever while you guys were recording that episode. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get to talk about it. So this is me through like the next 20 episodes. I'm just going to drop little bits of how much I liked that movie.
That's fair.
But yeah, typically your higher level movies do have quite a few of those elements. You know what I mean? Normally the ones that are at the top, like normally your best movies do have, normally they have all of those things, or some level of all of them. They're fun. They've got the colorful characters. They've got the deep story. They've got, normally you're talking about the best movies that have all of those things. Top Gun had all of those things.
You know what I watched the other day? Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yep, that's another example of something that has all of it. All of it.
But going back to this movie though, like I said, if he restrained himself because of that, like he did not want to get close to that torture porn aspect of it. I respect that decision. Because like I said, I'll take this movie any day of the week over that. Because like I said, it's few and far between. I mean, and that's kind of why like the Saw franchise is such a mixed bag. Because sometimes they made it work. And then sometimes you're just like, really? This is the 7th movie of this shit again?
Yeah.
And see, that's why, I mean, I know this isn't, it's not going to be necessarily same level as this or whatever, but I think the idea of the 2018 Halloween movie it's the same reason I liked it, as far as like, it's a more simple story. Like it wasn't over the top with like all of what it was trying to do with the story and all these other elements. It was a pretty simplistic, slasher movie. And yeah, there were the kills, and the kills were what they were supposed to be, but like it just felt like it was more like contained, I guess, in how they told the story throughout. And so I think that it's the same reason that I thought that one was done really well. Is the same reason I think this one was done really well. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah, because it's very easy to go too far with it. I mean, look at the next 2 Halloween movies.
Exactly.
They went overboard and they fucked up everything they did right in the first one. I was lower on the first one than you guys were. And it still dipped in quality. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it really is that fine line. And if you know what, if restraining yourself is what it takes to just put out a good movie, that's what you got to do. And I mean, like I said, this movie was good. I expected more and I wanted more, but in the end, I'll still take a good movie over a bunch of bullshit. Like I said, the Terrifier 2, it's just gratuitous killing from this one fucking clown fuck. And that movie ended and I'm like, why the fuck did I just watch this? And it's like 2 hours long. So it's just 2 hours of just what the fuck am I doing with my life?
Didn't that movie get a lot of hype or whatever? I thought the reception was, it was like one of the scariest movies, or one of the most, like, vomit inducing,
the second one's definitely better than the first one, but it's
bored.
That's what I heard too. The second one's a massive improvement over the first. That's another thing I heard.
That's not saying much. Like, all right, like if I was to just like quick, like remember back a few months and go scores, it's like a 36 for the second one. The first one's like a 3. So yeah, it's a massive improvement.
Damn. Okay.
But when you're improving over such a fucking garbage movie, of course it's better.
It's like an acquired type of horror that a lot of people really love, but it's not my particular taste of horror that I enjoyed as much. It was. I
can give you a comparison, Jastin.
Yeah.
It's Circus of the Dead.
Okay. Well, when you said a clown is killing people, I immediately thought of Circus of the Dead.
Yeah,
when you said that.
It's Circus of the Dead. And I'm not trying to knock Circus of the Dead. I've done that enough in my lifetime. But I'm just saying it's that type of movie.
Okay. So it's real big on just like a lot of just super heavy on the gore. So it is torture porn.
Yes.
It is.
It's how fucked up can we cut people in half? Last movie we cut somebody in half this way. This movie we're going to cut somebody in half this way.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that type of movie. And I will say this, they had a lot of creativity in the different ways they cut people in half. But at the end of the day, it's just a movie of some guy cutting people in half. Like in the end, that's all it is. And, and if that's that subgenre of horror that you enjoy, go enjoy your movie.
Yeah, because that subset, they definitely loved that movie. And for me, I was like, ooh, I don't know.
And that's the thing, though, is I still got no cringes. Like I still, you know what I mean? I still got no cringes out of it. But then also the story shit. So I latched on to nothing.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Wow. At least this had a good story. There was some good acting. There's good camera work, sound design, special effects. There's good stuff throughout this movie to still latch on to. There's nothing to latch on to. But, the people that are fans of that movie, they love that shit. And you know what? Those motherfuckers also kind of crazy. I mean that in a way that, like, they know what they like. And that's the shit they like. And don't talk about it in any sort of critical way, because they'll say they want to rape your mother.
Dang.
That is a thing.
I know that from experience.
Right.
That is true. That is true. People just,
and I think
shouldn't talk bad about Burger King. That's just the bottom line.
is Burger King on that low? You know what, Jastin? I think that is a very apt comparison. Burger King is the torture porn of fast food. I agree, sir. I agree.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I think that, like, I don't know. I think like another example for me of, I think one movie I've seen that it just really disturbed my soul is, it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like the remake one I haven't seen the original one.
The Jessica Biel one?
Yeah. Because, and here's why. Well, no, here's why though. It wasn't because it's, the crazy gore and the whatever, this and that. It was the disturbing behavior of the people in the movie. Like the very creepy, crawly, like, residents of the town that they were in that were related to Leatherface or whatever.
Okay. I don't typically say this because it's an old movie and we know how Sterling feels about old movies.
Yeah.
But go watch the original then.
Well, no, I mean, just to my point of like, the reason that one creeps me out more than something like a Saw is just the way that they utilize the very creepy, disturbing behavior that the people in the movie are doing.
Yeah.
That is what effectively disturbed me about it. You know what I mean? And I'm sure the original will 100% do the same thing.
I'm saying it does it better. Like it's that, but better.
Yeah, no, I have no doubt that you're correct. It's just, I missed seeing the first one. And then when I was in high school is when this one came out. And so that's just the one that I saw. So, but in either case, like, that's the type of stuff, like kind of like what we were talking about with how are you utilizing what's happening in your movie, right? Like, and that's what kind of really disturbed me about that film. And there's been other ones since then, but I remember specifically that's when I realized like, okay, this is the type of horror movie that really gets under my skin more than the others, is like when you have these people doing these very depraved, disturbing things in the way that they were doing in that movie. So just to kind of go back to the point of use, even if you're not overly gory in a scene or in a movie, if you're doing that part effectively, it's just as scary, honestly.
That Texas Chainsaw Massacre with Jessica Biel does hold a special place in my heart, though. Just because.
Because it's Jessica Biel?
Well, doesn't hurt.
That's what I was going to say.
But no, it worked at the movie theater when that movie came out. There was a guy who was nicknamed Rabbit. I don't know why. He was nicknamed Rabbit. And that guy, we're sitting there watching that movie, and afterwards he's like, yeah, my dad was one of the sheriff's officers that had to go into that house when they did those recordings. And I'm like,
God.
The things that don't exist, the things that are fake. He's like, no, it's based on a true story. Yeah, not in Texas. It's not a thing. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is based on Ed Gein from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And he's just so adamant. He lied about so much shit. And that was just one of those things that he's just like so adamant that his dad was one of the sheriff's officers that went into that house after the massacre happened. Like the house that doesn't exist. Like when everybody talks about it, he's like, no, it's like a museum now. And I'm like, yeah, because the house from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, yes, was in Texas. And they filmed a movie there. And they've kind of made it a Texas Chainsaw Massacre museum for the movie. Like, that's a real thing. But that's like as real as it gets. That there's a real house that filmed a real movie about a bunch of fake shit.
Man, that poor boy. Who lied to him? What family member lied to him?
No one lied to him. No one lied to him.
And he had to find out
just
like
made up that
it
shit.
was a lie.
You
think it just came from him? Like he wasn't told that? I'm thinking, man, he was probably told this by them for years and years and thinking, oh man, my dad, this is such a cool story. And then had to come to grips with the fact that, oh damn, this lie that people in my family have been telling me is wrong, but never mind. If it came from him, then never mind. But man, I like my version.
I like both versions of it though. I like yours that his just life was shattered because he found out the truth. But then I also like
he had a hard conversation that night when he went home.
I also like the fact that he just thought he was going to be some cool shit and was trying to impress people. And just I'm like, no, you're a fucking child.
You just completely got him caught in his lie.
That's hilarious, though. Mr. Rabbit.
Fucking dumbass.
Just, I imagine him going home after that conversation with you being like, listen.
But like, that's
I need to talk to you, Dad.
Only real memory of that guy. I don't remember his fucking name. Like, I'm not calling him Rabbit because like I'm trying to protect his identity. Nope. That's literally the only fucking thing I know that guy as.
Yeah, we'll just call him Rabbit for protection purpose.
Like, it's not like,
That's
you
funny.
know, that's his nickname, but I also know his name. No. His name could be Chris, John, Robert. I don't fucking know. His name could be Massacre. I don't know. Because his dad named him after the massacre he walked in on.
His name might be Ed.
Could be. Could be. But no, I mean, this movie though, I mean, if that is why it tamed itself, that's a fair judgment. I'll give it that. Because like I'm sitting there going, like, I watched the first Hostel movie, not that the first Hostel was pretty good. And then you get like to Hostel like 3 and you're just like, fucking stop. These are dumb. So if this leads to more movies because it's not dumb, that's a win. So you guys got any more thoughts about this here Evil Dead Rise?
I'm good.
Nope, I'm good.
On that note, thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Cinema Slayers podcast. Check us out on the internet at www.cinemaslayers.com, or Facebook, we're Cinema Slayers podcast, or Twitter and Instagram, where we're cinema_slayers, or TikTok, where we're Cinema Slayers pod, or YouTube, where we're at Cinema Slayers pod. Give us a 5-star rating and review. We'd really appreciate it. It'd really help us out. Tell your family, tell your friends, tell your friends' family, tell your family's friends, and most of all, tell those dear sweet mothers, because dear sweet mothers love.
They love
the baby child living.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say isolated apartments, but okay. The baby living, yes. They do love that.
Shout out to Plug Migo and Mundo Ochoa for our theme song and logos, respectively. Just remember, here at the Cinema Slayers podcast, we are both pro Slut and pro Sydney. And also, Jastin would like you to remember that Moon Knight is the Best Picture winner.
I thought you were going to add on to it. We're also anti-Burger King.
No, I was going to tell him to add that Jastin is pro Burger King, pro BK. Jastin is a BKP.
But at Cinema Slayers, as a whole, as a collective, we are not pro BK.
Cinema Slayers.
It's 2 versus 1. I've got Child Heather. Heather's a BKC. I'm a BKP. That beats your non-BK.
But,
so it's 1.
As an adult, and Heather as an adult, we both don't like BK. So worst case scenario, it's 1.5 people versus 1.5 people.
A tie goes to the Burger King.
I think, or you really want to break it down, I think Heather has stated more or less she's gone most of her life without Burger King, therefore.
So have I, but look, that's not what we're talking about here.
I'm just saying that would make it like 1.7 people, like non-Burger King adults, to 1.3 Burger King children. And plus, children are smaller than adults, so that's still less of a person.
Oh, man.
0.3 child versus 0.7 adult. There's less child than 0.7 adult.
But she said she really liked it. She said the chicken strips or whatever were the best thing.
You don't even remember what it was, Justin. It was chicken fries.
Oh.
It wasn't even strips, it's fries.
But it's the principle of the matter is what he's fighting for.
It was still decades ago. It was decades ago. If she was just even
that makes me sound super old
teenager, it would still be decades ago.
She vividly remembers it though, Sterling, like it was yesterday.
How old are you telling people I am right now?
Said,
I'm saying you're at least 33
yesterday.
Is all I'm saying.
But she remembered it like it was yesterday, Sterling.
No,
like
she didn't. She doesn't even
yesterday.
remember what fucking sauce. She had to guess. I don't even think Burger King has a sweet and sour sauce. So she's just assuming that was the sauce because that's her preferred sauce method.
This is my go-to sauce at the time. I don't know.
I don't even think Burger King has a sweet and sour sauce.
Might have been ketchup. It might have been ketchup.
That's even worse.
But
It's just fucking ketchup.
BKK is pretty on point. BKK.
No, it's not, Jastin. It's just fucking ketchup. It is Red Cat in its soul. Quit trying to sit there and make Burger King ketchup a thing like it's fucking Whataburger or some shit.
BKK.
BKK is one letter away from being a fucking hate group. Do you really want to keep saying that?
It's got the B in there. It can manage.
A
All
B
I'm saying is, look.
it's just
she
a
vividly-
rounded fucking K.
All I'm saying is Heather vividly remembered her experience at Burger King. She remembers that experience, and she never forgot her time at Burger King.
If she
never forgot that
vividly
experience.
remembered it, she would definitively be able to know the sauce.
It was just that the food was so good. She was too busy yumming, so she doesn't quite remember the sauce, but she remembers the yum. And it's all about the yum when you go to BK.
Justin,
You
I'm
know
not
that.
trying
You
to
were
yuck
just
your
there.
yum here. I'm not trying to yuck your yum. But you know damn well, if it's chicken at Burger King, it needs a sauce like it's fucking Raising Cane's.
Oh, come on. Come on.
Uh-oh.
We're not bringing Cane's into this. Cane's
Fighting words.
is perfect. It's a 10 out of 10. Now, back to Burger King.
Justin,
And
Cane's
Burger
sauce
King
is
like
a 10 out of 10.
9.87.
Justin,
Burger King
Cane's
is
sauce is a
9.8.
10 out of a 10. Cane's chicken's a 4 on a good day.
Oh, no. Come on.
Justin, have you ever taken a bite of Cane's chicken without sauce on it?
We will not discuss that.
I'm just saying.
We will discuss.
It is a necessity.
BK.
And you know damn well, Burger King chicken fries, a sauce would be a necessity.
I don't
No
think
one
so,
has
man.
ever sat there and gone, I'm going to eat some fucking chicken fries plain because they are just that damn good. No one ever has done that.
Heather, did you dip every single one of your BKCFs? Or did you kind of, eat some plain and then, a BKCF in the BKK? Or did you just eat them, or did you just eat some of them plain? Tell the truth about these BKCFs. Come on.
I truthfully don't remember.
So it was just that
it
great of an
sounds-
experience. You were like, wow. And it just it's hard to just try to remember how great that experience was. It was just it was like an out of body experience,
It sounds like me to be the person that would eat some of them without a sauce just because I wanted to taste it without the sauce. But that's just kind of what I do with everything.
I do have good
that I
news
dip
for
in
you.
Sauce.
They do have a sweet and sour at least.
Okay.
Oh,
Maybe
thank
I was
goodness.
right. My
Thank
memory still
goodness.
holds.
There you go. So you did have that BKSS. All right. We're good.
Maybe. And do you really want to throw an SS in here? Do you really want Nazi imagery with the damn near one letter away BKK? Come on, Justin. Burger King's a fucking hate group.
I said BKSS for BKFC.
Just saying, Justin. There's a lot of hateful imagery associated with Burger King. Do you really want to go that way?
What do you want, man? You don't like BK. You don't like the BKSS. You don't like the BKCF. You don't like the BKK. I mean, come on, man. You're not down with the BKPs. What's up, man? Or the BKCs. You counted BKCs as less of a BKP. I don't understand you, man. Come on, man.
That's just sheer mathematics, Justin. I mean, that's about as impartial as you can get. An adult is bigger than a child, and 0.3 of a child versus 0.7 of adult. 0.7 of an adult is more person than 0.3 of a child.
There's just no winning with you, is there? I can't win with you.
Not with Burger King.
You just had it, and I know you liked it. Come on, just say you liked some of it.
Even eat the fucking burger. It was so, just the onion rings and fries alone made me not want to finish my fucking meal. And I went to a fucking gas station to get good food.
Oh, God.
I spent more money just to get food I'd rather eat. Because I went to Burger King out of desperation. I needed food, and it was the first one I saw on the highway.
I can't believe you passed a BK for a GS. That's silly. I don't understand that.
It's called standards, Justin. Maybe one day you'll have them.
A GS, though?
Yeah.
Off of a BK?
Yeah. I'll pick a gas station any day of the week over a fucking Burger King at this point. I can't do it.
Yikes. This is too much. This is verbal gore. This is the kind of gore that's too much. This is way too much.
This is where you start getting cringy.
This is the torture porn verbal gore that you're admonishing on me right now.
That's fair, Jastin. Your love of Burger King is borderline torture porn.
Oh God, is it?
Yes, it's fucking Burger King, Jastin. What you were doing to your body is the equivalent of chewing glass.
Now I'm thinking about that character on that counter going with a Burger King burger, and she being like, "No," and then him just going, "No." God.
And then you see it swallow. You just see the food swallowing in her throat, and the woman's like,
"No, not BK, no." I hate you.
Yes. All right, we're out.